This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 470. The babble that can be said is not the Tao of Sales Babble.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. And if you've been listening to this podcast for the last year or so, you've probably been asking the question, does this Tao of Sales Babble seem too preachy? Gushing and dogmatic about listening and patience and being a good friend to perfect strangers? You're probably a bit skeptical about all this woo-way, and good for you. I don't blame you. You should be. Because the kind of stuff that we're talking about is not really prescriptive. There isn't like a script that says, well, if this happens, go right, and if this happens, go left. No, there's like a whole lot more nuance than the words can say. That's what we're trying to get across in the Tao of Sales Babble, because it's a whole lot more than that. And that is the topic for today. But before we get to that, make sure and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And so, with no further ado, let's get to it. And now today's chapter, the limits of language. The Tao of Sales Babble cannot be fully explained. To say it's about listening might construe sellers never demonstrate their product. To say only buyers decide to purchase might construe sellers never close. In neither case is this completely true. Language has limits in its ability to describe. To say a knife is sharp omits the back of the blade as dull. To say that sales is definitely this or that is to not know sales. Master selling cannot be fully described in words. It's a mystery of art, science, and humanity. And now today's story. The meeting was running over an hour with the prospect. Chris kept asking Lee questions, and it seemed like the meeting would never end. Finally, Pat stepped in with a closing question. It sounds like what we've presented here might work for you, Lee. Is that correct? Lee perked up. Yes, I can see how this would address our quality issues. Pat smiled. Well, let's get started finalizing the paperwork and get you guys online next month. How does that sound? Lee smiled and said, yeah, let's do that. Afterwards, Chris asked Pat, but I thought I was supposed to keep Lee talking and let them close themselves. Isn't that what we've been preaching? Pat sighed. I can see why you might think that, Chris. But it's more important that you know I'm not teaching you a script. I'm trying to teach you to think and be nimble. There are no hard rules. In this case, you were going around in circles. It was time to advance the sale. Oprah Winfrey once wrote, "You define your own life. Don't let other people write your script." I agree, because people are random in how they act. You can never be fully prepared on what to say whenever you meet a new prospect. It's like dancing. You know the steps, but your partner may not. They may make a mistake. They may step on your foot. Hey! Should you get angry and walk off the dance floor? Certainly not. You improvise and you get back in the flow. That's the art of dancing. And that's the Tao of Sales Babble. When you're present to the moment and feel what's happening now, you'll know when to act. You'll know what to say. It's just like bringing a spoon to your mouth. You never miss. You'll hit the target every time. To get a copy of today's Sales Babble chapter, you can find it in the show notes. at www.salesbabble.com. And while you're on the website, if you have any questions, click the Babble Me, and that will send a message directly to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any question you have about this episode or any other episode. And lastly, if you could do me a favor, if you could share this episode with just one person, one friend that's looking to grow their selling skills, I would really appreciate it. That's one of the best ways of growing a podcast. In fact, probably that's why you're listening to this podcast. Think about it. Probably somebody told you about the podcast, or you heard me on somebody else's podcast. That's how this works. That's how this audio stuff works. After all these years of podcasts, it more or less has not changed in 15 years. The way you grow a podcast is about the same as it was 15 years ago. With that said, that's all I've got for this week, folks. Until next time, until next Tuesday, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.